Hi there. Sorry, I'm a bit a few minutes late here. I realized that I hadn't actually started the broadcast. Anyways, I'm here, and I'm just going to wait for any questions or topics of discussion. I see there are 3 viewers there. I am still here. I'm just checking out, trying to get caught up on course email, but I'm available here for questions or topics for discussion at any time. But I'm working on things for the course in the meanwhile. I'm still available for questions or discussion. Oh, hello, I just realized that I found a new way to make a mistake here. Hello, is anyone still there? I finally see the questions here. Apologies that took so long. Daniela, to answer your question, if you are the one person who is still here, yes, there are two data sets with discussion boards in Google Groups. You can pick and choose a data set. You don't even have to ask for approval, but you have to request to join one of the groups if you want to join the discussion. But yes, it is your choice which one you pick. If you're just getting started, my advice probably is to get started on the NYC Community Health survey. Even though it's a bigger data set, it's a bit of an easier data set to work with, and there are also more people doing that, and so the discussion might be easier. So yes, that's okay. Hi, John. So let's see, I just got the question. Okay. At feedback, you still have a question. You're unclear if ANOVA amongst groups proves a significant difference between some groups and not others. Is the relative risk still valid, or is it just giving a general relative risk against all the other groups? Yes, it is still valid to calculate the relative risk. That relative risk might not be different from one in that case, but you can give the relative risk. The only caveat there is that the confidence interval to go with the relative risk, unless you use the output like of Tukey's method or the LSD method, it won't be corrected for multiple testing. So your confidence interval will probably be a bit smaller than it should be if you are just picking the most significant. But that is totally fine to, what the flow that I would suggest is you do an ANOVA. If you get a significant p-value, you follow up like with Tukey's on a significant difference method, and you get relative risks or odds ratios for each of the pairs, and those intervals that you get from the post hoc tests will be corrected for multiple testing, and you can report those. So I hope that answers your question. Sorry that it took me so long to find it. I see there is one viewer still. And I can see your questions now. Hi, John. I'm sorry that I kept you waiting earlier. Um, just going back through SPSS to see if Tucky's adjust my CRA for relative risk. Yeah. Normally, yeah, I actually haven't. I don't remember. I have done that in SPSS, but I don't remember right now if the Tucky's method does provide the adjusted confidence intervals. Um, it's not going to be a terrible thing in your case. You're not doing a huge number of pairwise comparisons, but ideally, yeah, the confidence intervals should be adjusted for multiple testing if you're doing it in post hoc tests, like if you're doing a bunch of them. And Tucky's method does do that. Let's say I'm actually, yeah, I'll open up SPSS myself. Yeah, here's your answer. With this Tukey HSD method, you get your confidence interval on the mean difference in the response variable, which in this case is your age. And this is adjusted for multiple testing. It should be. And you get this for LSD also. Tukey HSD is the one that I have seen used the most. So I would feel confident in reporting these confidence intervals. So John, when you say relative risk, I guess I was thrown off. I'm sorry, because you were talking about ANOVA before. So that was why I talked about Tukey's HSD. So I'm not sure what you're talking about with respect to relative risk here, which is only defined for two binary variables. And by the way, for office hours, you can also join through the Google Plus page, which would mean that you could actually talk to me, which might be easier than just chatting. But so ANOVA is not going to spit out a risk table because relative risk is not applicable to a continuous response variable. It's going to instead give you confidence intervals on the difference in means. I guess I initially found differences between the boroughs with ANOVA. Sorry, what are the differences between what and then running that one borough? Yeah, Google, it would be handy just to actually be able to speak. um, and it should be possible. If you go like to the if you go to the Google Plus page of the class, um, the likelihood of having asthma. So you used asthma. Asthma is a binary variable. I assume it's like yes or no. Um, so you used asthma as your response variable. And you use the 5 boroughs as your grouping variable. I guess you can do that. That's a bit of I don't know. It's not really correct because you have a binary response variable. This would be this would be a logistic regression. Um, so I'd be a bit cautious about the interpretation of an ANOVA there. What I would just do is a chi-square test. So you have asthma yes or no as one of your variables and borough as the other one. And so if you have 5 boroughs and you have asthma, then you have a 5x2 table. You do a chi-square test, and then you can, if your chi-square test is significant, you can just you can give the relative risks for Bronx versus the other 4 boroughs, or for Staten Island versus the other 4 boroughs, and that's fine. And it won't be adjusted for multiple testing, but that's not a huge amount of multiple testing, and I suspect, I mean, there's such a large sample size here that I doubt that the multiple testing is going to take you from being significant to not significant. I mean, if you do Bronx versus the other 4 boroughs and do a chi-square test, and you could just take your p-value and do a Bonferroni correction if you want to really be cautious about it, which would be, if you're doing that for each of the boroughs, you just multiply your p-value by the number of tests that you're doing and see if it's still less than alpha. And if it is, then you can be quite safe that each of those comparisons is still significant. So my advice is just to stick with chi-square tests here, not use ANOVA. Sorry, what are you saying is right? And this, yeah, I'm not sure about. This would be nice to get figured out. It doesn't look like you're viewing it through the plus page, so I don't think that you would be able to connect directly to me through the Hangout. Sorry, JD, what do you mean? There's a problem with streaming? What do you mean? Yeah, no, stick with chi-square tests, and unless you have a continuous variable for your y, for your response variable. Um, that's really what ANOVA is for. Um, there are other ways to analyze all categorical data, but that's starting to get beyond the scope of the course and into other kinds of generalized linear models. But really, for your purposes, chi-square test is just fine. As for the Plus Hangout channel, let's see. There's the URL. That's not a very here's our page. So there's a short URL that you could use. MP804B. All right. I'll stay on a few extra minutes since it took so long for me to get started here. This, by the way, this is a shortened URL for the class's Google Plus page and a place where you should be able to join the Hangout as a Hangout, like to talk. There's our event page, also rather verbose. Yeah, stick with this one. Oh, for the flu shot, what are the relevance of the last two variables, strata? You can ignore these. I included these for interest, and I think I mentioned them in if you look in the project description in the document where I described the project. I think I mentioned them in there, but um, the relevance of those is that um, not all not all areas were sampled equally, so it's not an entirely representative sample of New York. And what those tell you is, so the strata, I'm actually not super familiar with the sampling design of this study, but the city is divided into strata. I don't know if it's by neighborhood, um, or if it is some other demographic characteristic that it's stratified by. I suspect it's by neighborhood, and some of them are oversampled relative to others, and the strata tell you which which group, which of these sampling groups each of the participants belongs to, and the weight tells you um, how much those are over or under sampled relative to the others. And so if you wanted to get a prevalence estimate of something like what is the prevalence of people receiving the flu shot in New York, you would have to use those variables to weight the prevalences from each stratum in order to get an accurate overall estimate of the prevalence of the flu shot in New York. And strictly to be correct, there are ways. I think it's an add-on to SPSS to account for those when doing. Sorry about that. When doing association tests. However, um, it's not critical for an association test, and I doubt that it will change your results that much. Um, it's more important when you're going to say, when you want to just answer simple questions like what is the overall prevalence of the flu shot. You're very welcome, John. Um, huh. Okay, sorry that you weren't able to join by Hangout. I'm still getting the hang of this technology. Um, I guess by the next time I teach this class, I'll have it all figured out. It'll be totally smooth. So, all right, thanks. If there is another question in the next couple minutes, I'll answer that, and otherwise, I will sign off pretty soon here. All right, and Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming. And I will be doing some catching up on email and looking over people's projects tomorrow. And I will continue doing this for the rest of the time before the presentations. All right. Good night.